Well, we've spoken on previous occasions about some of the things going on locally to try and connect landlords to various discussions about tenants and other landlord-tenant relationships, and today is another one of those occasions. Helen Guzzo is back with us from the city of Battle Creek. Good morning.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming. And Alisa Parker is here, too, an attorney with Legal Services of South Central Michigan. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time today. So you have a special discussion and dinner next Thursday, and another opportunity exists then for landlords and you to talk a little bit about some of the specific things on which you're working. What is it?
So for about, 2 years now, we've been doing these landlord dinner and discussions.
Yeah.
So basically, the one coming up on next Thursday is an opportunity for us to have just open dialogue with the landlords that have been coming. For the past couple years, we've been talking about topics that present to them. So anywhere from bed bugs to code, the ordinance and how are you supposed to comply with that, to fair housing. But what we haven't had the chance yet to do is sit down with landlords and say, okay, what are some of the issues that you're facing that maybe we're not aware of or we've not locked into? Okay. How can we make this a better relationship? Overall, one of our goals is to create a list so that we can have second chance housing for renters who may have faced eviction in the past. So how can we create that when we need to create some trust? And one of the first steps to do that is we need to have a discussion with landlords and find out, what are your needs? What are the things that create the barrier for tenants who may have a record of eviction or some past history? How can we work together to make it better so we can provide affordable housing to some of our low-income tenants?
Well, and let's understand this, because if someone is looking for a place to live and they intend to rent and they intend to apply, it's likely they're going to be asked to provide references, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's in those situations where it becomes clear if they've had an eviction in the past or some kind of a relationship that's been troubled with a landlord, that's going to get revealed pretty quickly, isn't it?
Absolutely.
This whole effort has been coming out of the Greater Battle Creek Homeless Coalition. We've called it the Rental Housing Roundtable, and there's 10 nonprofit and government providers that have been meeting, trying to build a better relationship with local landlords, because there's a lot of homeless folks that go in and out of housing, and they need second chances. And we have a whole array of programs. Community Action does utility assistance, Salvation Army does utility assistance, Legal Services helps with legal issues. We've been doing education, and this is a time where we're going to do more discussion, kind of leaving our panel discussion format to try something new and to get some new information, because the whole effort has been quarterly meetings to build relationships with landlords. And we've had a lot of providers come because homelessness is all about housing. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is reach out with landlords and get them to be active partners and to know the resources when there's a problem, so we can prevent eviction or we can help a family or a household be successful in housing.
And we'll talk a little more about that when we come right back on 95.3 WBCK. We're here with Helen Guzzo from the city of Battle Creek and Alisa Parker, an attorney with Legal Services of South Central Michigan. Landlord-tenant relations, the focus, and as well trying to uncover what challenges landlords have with tenants, and perhaps trying to understand some of the challenges there. A dinner and discussion next Thursday that would help to try and uncover that. And we'll give you those details coming up in just a few minutes as to where and when and all of that. Let's try and understand what's really happening here. You know, we here at the station work closely with the Haven of Rest, and many times when we've had discussions with them, the notion is that the folks whom they see on a regular basis, many of them have been one problem, financial issue away from being without a place to live. And I'm sure that you see that too. So this is the purpose of this discussion, is that we're trying to keep people with a roof over their heads. What are some of the challenges, Alisa, with this, so that you see from a legal perspective?
Absolutely. So our office is in court weekly now. Landlord-tenant court is usually on Monday all day. And a lot of times what we see is cases come in two categories. You have non-payment of rent or people whose leases are being terminated. the majority of the cases that we see are non-payment of rent. And people mostly are being evicted because they don't have the funds to be able to afford where they're living. In some cases, people are withholding rent because they're living in housing that may be substandard. In those cases, we may raise defenses and we'll get involved. But in the non-payment of rent cases, a lot of times it's about trying to put the person in a position to either catch up on their rent, or maybe they're in a situation where the housing is just unaffordable. So they need to transition into affordable housing. What can we do to negotiate with the landlord? So maybe we give them more time to move, or we set up a payment arrangement. So, people often facing, some kind of income loss or whatever the case may be, one paycheck not being there, some hours being cut from work, being sick, having a car breakdown. All of those very little things sometimes can mean the difference between being able to be housed or not be housed. And so being able to negotiate at the point of eviction while we're there, and that's great. Sometimes at the point of eviction, you're now in crisis. So by partnering with the agencies in town, one of the things that we're starting to work on and develop is an eviction diversion program. Because what we've recognized is one of the other barriers to accessing housing, even if you get a person in a position to, maybe they need to move to more affordable housing, if they have this record of eviction, it's going to prevent them from getting housing in the future. So with an eviction diversion model, and this program is in other counties like Kalamazoo, Ingham County, so it's a model that's been proven to work. It basically diverts the person out of the court system. So even though they're at eviction, we negotiate, we enter a settlement that would dismiss the case if the non-payment situation is taken care of. And then that person would be linked to resources so that they can get the non-payment situation resolved. So that's in the works right now. That's not fully solidified, but that's a model that we in Calhoun County are trying to work toward.
And the notion is that if there's a visible path to a solution, you're able to say to the landlord, look, we're going to straighten this out. Is that the idea, Helen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's resources for utility assistance at Salvation Army, True North, and Community Action. So often, if there's just not enough money to pay all the bills, you can go get assistance. And the earlier you go to get assistance, the better. Although often to get rental assistance or back payment, you need to actually have some eviction notice from notice to quit
or a summons and complaint from the court.
Right. And but if you're having budgeting issues, you can go to the Goodwill Financial Opportunity Center and get budget counseling, or you can, if you're having problems paying your mortgage, you can go to Southwest Michigan Community Development Corporation and get mortgage counseling and apply to the Hardest Hit Fund. So the sooner you recognize you got a non-payment issue, and you can go to our partners, we have great nonprofits that do wonderful work, ask for help. You can avoid some of these problems. And there's just a variety of nonprofits that meet with the Homeless Coalition. We meet the third Tuesday of the month in the United Way boardroom at noon. And if people are interested in working on homelessness, the Homeless Coalition is welcoming anyone, churches, individuals, to come to the Homeless Coalition on the third Tuesday at United Way at noon.
All right. Alisa, I presume that when a person is at a point of eviction, that's taken some time, has it not?
Yeah, usually. And so in a non-payment situation, what generally happens is by law, if a person is behind, so rent is due on the 1st, they don't pay it. The landlord can then serve them with what's called a demand for possession. That's not a court document, but it's basically a document to get the process started that says, hey, look, you're behind. You have 7 days to pay this. If you don't pay it, you can move. Or if you don't pay it, we'll go forward with court. So if the person doesn't pay at that point, then the next step that happens is the case is filed. The person is served with a summons and complaint. So sometimes it happens pretty quickly, but in a lot of cases, landlords typically will wait about a month or so before they incur the cost of filing a court document, because people can or they may be able to get caught up. The other type of eviction that we see is called termination of tenancy. And so in those cases, that's where the landlord is saying, look, I don't want money. It could be because of a non-payment situation, but they're saying, I'm just ending the lease. And in that case, what the landlord has to do is first serve a 30-day notice to quit. And then after that 30 days has expired, if the tenant hasn't moved, the landlord can go forward with filing a court case. In terms of just, though, again, what we're seeing often is that pattern of non-payment. So even in cases where we see terminations, a lot of times what's leading to a termination is a history of late payment or non-payment. And so some of that, going back to what Helen said, is how do we spot these issues earlier? So yes, again, when they come to court, we're in triage at that point.
Right.
But one of the things that we've sat down with clients to do sometimes is, okay, we got the non-payment situation resolved. How are we prioritizing our bills? Like, we all experience what it's like to have to sometimes pay this bill, move this bill to a later date. And so sometimes people don't realize that paying your house payment first should be your top priority, because you'll lose your housing before you get sued for like a credit card debt or before your lights get turned out. And it's easier sometimes to find resources for a utility versus your rent. And so we've seen people where they're trying to pay off an electric bill because it's really high this month, but you didn't pay your rent. And so sometimes we have to say, okay, look, if you pay your light bill, that's great, but it's not going to matter if you're homeless in 2 weeks. And so how can we teach people to reprioritize sometimes so that they can set up a plan? When people don't have a lot of funds to work with, the reality is you need a plan to live. And so some of what we're working on and some of what the agencies have to offer just really help people figure out, how do I plan when I don't have a lot of money to still be able to maintain housing?
All right, so I think we understand the climate here. When we come back in a minute, we can talk about what goals you have for this dinner next week to help try and get folks moving in the direction that we need to move them in. And that's coming up in just a moment on 95.3 WBCK. 95.3 WBCK. A few more minutes with Helen Guzzo from the city of Battle Creek and Alisa Parker, an attorney with Legal Services of South Central Michigan. You have a landlord dinner and discussion next Thursday, 5 to 6:30 at the Salvation Army Gym in Battle Creek on Capitol Avenue. What do you want to accomplish with this event?
We're continuing to build a relationship with landlords, because private landlords are the key to ending homelessness and to helping folks be successful in housing, because there's not enough rental assistance, there's not enough government programs to help low-income people. So the key is working with private landlords, and private landlords have to be registered with the city of Battle Creek if they're in the city of Battle Creek, so they have to meet minimum housing code. They have to offer housing in a fair housing manner, but they have to know that they're not alone when there's problems, because we have nonprofits. The first stop is always the Department of Health and Human Services for state emergency relief. And then there's the Salvation Army and Community Action. And we've had a wonderful partnership here. We started meeting about 2 years ago, the Rental Housing Roundtable, and we were like, the answer is to develop better relationships with landlords. And so this has really been a wonderful partnership. The Battle Creek Housing Commission has been sponsoring our dinners. We've gotten a grant from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. This really has been a community collaborative to say we need to improve our relationships with private landlords. We want private landlords to know about the resources. So it's really been an education model. And this particular dinner is going to be more a dinner and discussion. We want to hear, how can we help improve the relationship, because we want more second chances for homeless families and individuals to be successful in housing. And when there's a issue, getting it early. The whole idea between the eviction diversion is to prevent homelessness and to help folks be successful in their housing, so that landlords don't have to go through the process of eviction and having a vacant house and losing income. We know private landlords are in it to make money, but in a fair and equitable way, providing good housing. And we're here to help that relationship when it's troubled.
Yeah, Alisa, I imagine if we go right at what the perceptions are, landlords are exhausted sometimes when they have a tenant who doesn't pay on time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think one of the biggest goals that we can aim out of this is if we can find ways to undergird and make our tenants successful, landlords are successful. So you have tenants who are paying rent on time. Guess what? You're getting paid. You're making money. If you have housing that's good quality, guess what? You're going to get more good tenants who want to stay in that housing. So it's a yes and solution, instead of putting people on opposite sides and creating more adversarial relationships. How do we work together? Yes, there will be situations where there is adversary, but overall, people want to stay housed and landlords want to make money. So,
well, and it sounds like you're trying to get at what the root causes of the problems are and try and correct those, as opposed to sending that tenant off to another landlord where the situation may repeat itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. and then the problem doesn't go away.
Right, because we have case managers at the Haven and the Share Center that are helping homeless folks get housing, and the private market is how they have to do it most often.
Right. All right, so it is a landlord dinner and discussion Thursday next week, February 23rd, 5 to 6:30 at the Salvation Army Gym in Battle Creek, and that's on Capitol Avenue Northeast. Do folks need to RSVP with you or anything?
Yeah, they can come, but we would that's the rental roundtable bc@gmail.com, or
Okay.
I'm taking RSVPs at 966-3364. That's 966-3364. And the Salvation's Army is located in the former McKinley Elementary School there on 400 Capitol Northeast.
All right, let's say that phone number once more if you would.
The phone number is 966-3364.
966-3364 is that number if you'd like to attend that landlord dinner and discussion next Thursday. Thanks to you both for talking about this with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.